presented here for your consideration the notion that the ordinary people surrounding you every day, on the street, the bus, at the post office, or the trendy evening venue, are, in fact, far from ordinary. That these men, women, and others form their own splinter groups behind closed doors, and that these micro-societies engage in activities often more obscure than fiction. Welcome to the Sub-Subculture.
Hello, and thank you for joining us on the Sub-Subculture Podcast. I'm your host and future low-grade meat product, Andrew.
And I'm Joe, the turd that simply will not flush.
Nice. That's great. That's
Welcome.
Lovely.
Your two hosts are here.
Woo! Circling the drain, as always. What are we talking about this week, my friend?
This week, my dear friend, we are talking about anti-vaxxers, anti-vaccination movements.
Oh, I'm all fired up coming for these people. Or maybe I'm not. Who knows?
Who knows?
Anyway, anti-vaxxers. People what don't do vax.
At what point does healthy skepticism turn into irrational paranoia?
That's a very good question, and one we'll potentially answer. What were your preconceptions going into anti-vaxxers? What did you think about this already?
My preconceptions were not kind to the anti-vaxxer, and for a long time I've been a big believer in science, in institutions, in collective responsibility, etc., etc. And to me, rejecting a vaccine was an utterly absurd, self-destructive notion based on absolutely nothing. But that began to change a bit over COVID, and one of my friends who was a bit vaccine skeptical, especially about the new rushed out ones, and she got very sick from one of the second COVID booster, and it did sort of make me question. It kind of brought things home a bit, like, maybe blindly trusting all vaccines, there's a bit more nuance to it. What about you?
Okay, interesting. I guess similarly, I didn't have a lot of faith in people who claim to be anti-vaxxers because it usually tends to be screamed rather than spoken softly. From just the name of it, I knew that it was people who don't get vaccinated or stop their kids being vaccinated. And it's kind of easy to write these people off as idiots or conspiracy nutters who justify this with all sorts of crazy stories. But I guess I had a vague notion that some people's reasons might be, to them, fairly rational. And largely, I think it's people who might be misguided and distrustful of medical institutions. From at least one first-hand person I've spoken to, it really comes from I don't know what they, because there's always some shadow organization or a government that they don't trust. I don't know what they're up to. I don't know what they put into this, that these people have kind of lost or never had that trust in a larger body. So that's what I guess that's what I thought to start with.
Yeah, I think there's more to it than meets the eye, potentially, to unpacking that.
So let's maybe start with some definitions. I've got a little question for you around... Well, it's not a question for you. It's me going to talk at you for a length of time.
Okay. I'd like to know, what is a vax?
What is a vaccination? I'm glad you asked, Joe. Thank you.
Does that help you start? You're welcome.
It does. So I think most people know or have an idea, but in simple terms so that we can understand what anti-vaxxers are against, I think is a good thing to define.
If today's your first day on Earth, then listen closely.
If you only recently acquired ears, and this is how you've chose to use them, first of all, you need to ask some questions about yourself. Secondly, I'm going to educate you, fool. Vaccination is administering a vaccine to help the immune system develop immunity from a disease. So vaccines contain a microorganism or virus in a weakened, live, or killed state, or the proteins and toxins from the organism itself. And vaccines are usually administered via an injection, although some are created to be given orally, and generally those are the ones that can build up an immunity somewhere within the bowel, like the ones for cholera and typhoid. But generally the injections are preferable because the oral method of delivery is not always reliable for getting it absorbed through the intestine. So it's better to just jab it under your skin and let your tissue ingestify it.
Well researched. The last second made up some words.
Yep.
Yeah. Get in your bloodstream and then have your tissues ingestify.
But the type or composition of a specific vaccine, i.e. do they use a dead part? Do they just use the proteins from it? Do they use a weakened live one? Will all depend on which disease or virus is being targeted. So when we think about some of the big ones that have been around for a long time, like the polio vaccine, which was first developed in the 30s, It introduces a weakened strain of the virus into the body in order for the natural human immune system to develop the necessary antibodies or antigens to fight the virus should the patient come into contact with the full version. So effectively, what we're doing with the vaccine is teaching the body what the enemy looks like, how to identify it, and what kills it in case you pick up that pathogen later in your life.
It's like practicing on a demo version of a game and then being ready to beat the full one as soon as it releases.
I've got a more colourful illustration for you, if you'd like.
Please do. Preferably one that relates to cars.
You can replace some of the words in your head from what I'm going to say with car,
Okay.
and that'll be fine. So imagine if the Earth was invaded by aliens. They're bigger than humans, they're physically stronger than us, and they have weapons we don't understand, which, for the sake of argument, let's say, make us lose control of our bladder permanently and we just all piss ourselves to death.
To death?
Yeah.
Wow.
To death.
It just doesn't stop.
Yeah. It never ever stops rapidly.
You run out of urine and then you start in on your organs.
You immediately dehydrate yourself. Yeah.
Urine,
you-
then blood, then organs, then
Makes
bones.
you liquefy your bones and piss them out.
Damn, that's a serious death ray.
Alien tech, we can't understand it. But so if these aliens come en masse one day to conquer the planet, we're completely fucked because we won't know what to do with them. We've never seen them before, and they'll win.
I'm going to run up to them and I'm going to turn inside out at them.
Can you do that now?
It's easier with a death ray.
Oh, it's horrifying. So instead of this scenario where they come en masse, imagine just one of them crash lands here on its own one day. It's injured. Some scientists catch it and dissect it and find out, hey, these guys are violently, lethally allergic to jam. And we can tell everyone about jam, and we can make sure everyone has jam available at all times, and we put jam in public places. So suddenly, when the rest of the aliens do show up en masse, we hit them with a bit of jam, which we all have now on our persons at all times. Whenever we see them, they die, we don't, and the population carries on.
Kablam!
That's vaccination. Vaccination equals jam.
Jam vaccination.
That's all you have to take away from this.
That was very colourful. I enjoyed that.
Depending on the type of jam you have, it could be extremely colourful.
I like that about jam.
Anyway, so we stimulate the body's adaptive immunity. Vaccines help prevent the sickness from an infection taking over. And then when a sufficiently large percentage of the population has been vaccinated, we get herd immunity. And a little quote on this from the World Health Organization, the WHO.
Who?
Vaccines train your immune system to create antibodies, just as it does when it's exposed to the disease. However, because vaccines contain only killed or weakened forms of germs, like viruses or bacteria, they don't cause the disease or put you at risk of complications.
Nice.
So that's what we're really aiming for with vaccination as a population. We are trying to get to herd immunity, because when a greater percentage of the population is immune, this protects not only those people that have built up the immunity themselves, but it also makes sure that the virus doesn't affect more people and has a smaller chance of spreading to those with a weakened immune system or who are unvaccinated for any reason, i.e. it's dangerous to give it to them. If you've got this kind of firewall in place that the majority of people aren't going to pick it up, therefore aren't going to carry it to more places, then those people are going to kind of be protected by the herd.
And eventually the virus will die out, such as smallpox, which was
1970s-ish.
in 1977. And interestingly, there's only one other disease that the World Health Organization has declared is completely eradicated. Rinderpest, which is one I'd not heard of, or basically cattle plague, which killed loads of cattle in previous years and was declared eradicated in 2011. Surprisingly few, actually. I thought there'd be more. Polio's nearly gone. It's like 99% down on what it used to be, but not quite there yet.
When we say anti-vaxxers, we're talking about people who specifically withdraw themselves or their children from the standard state or global medical body sponsored provided treatment, which has been the standard in most developed countries for around 100 years. Seems like a thing you'd want to withdraw from, right?
Yeah. So what are the perceived benefits from not having a vaccine, or what are the perceived downsides? Why would you want to withdraw from this? It sounds like it's just good for your health, so you don't get a preventable disease.
I think there's a few things at play. Chief among them, from my preconceptions in some of the published articles, might be this deep distrust of states or governing bodies, and therefore people don't want anything to be given to them by some institution. And I think some of them also will have read scare stories which circulate online that tell them vaccines don't work and then give you the disease. So they think, hey, you're going to inject me with some of that disease. I don't want to get smallpox. Why on earth would I get vaccinated against smallpox by getting smallpox? Or that it creates side effects which are worse.
Yeah. Some guy in a forum said that it's going to give you the disease, and thousands of scientists and institutions and the government says this is going to prevent disease, and you decide to trust that Reddit comment.
Yep, that's almost exactly what happens in some cases. Or they have a fear that the side effects are worse than those things being treated. So the popular example that we can find online that's been circulating for the last 10 to 30 years has been that certain vaccines cause autism, which is just completely wildly ridiculous.
I have a whole piece on that.
I've got some also information more good to say words at. And I think there's also a smaller percentage of this subculture that have been sucked into even wilder conspiracy theories around what's actually inside the vaccine. And not to give too much of it away, but my father-in-law falls into this category. Have I told you about him before? So he's kind of gone off the deep end conspiracy theory-wise, and he holds some belief or fear that they, i.e. the usual shadowy entity,
Government,
whoever it is that he doesn't trust,
gummy man,
but they has put something into, I think he got worse around the COVID ones, but yeah, he thinks that inside vaccines, there's something that would allow them to switch us all off, i.e. he thinks it's going to let the government or whoever is controlling it kill people. Like every person they control has got like a little switch somewhere in a control room. They're like, Joe, sounds lame. Flick. And you just go collapse in your shit, and that'd be the end of that.
Not like this.
Yeah.
Not like this.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Good Matrix reference working in there.
Thank you. Yeah. It's quite a mess, really. I think I found probably 3 different types of anti-vaxxer. One was the new age health guru type that believes everything natural is good and everything man-made is bad, and doesn't want a vaccine because natural immunity is better, organic food, and they like dying of preventable disease.
It's so natural. This is what God intended for me.
Yeah. Nature is brutal. It's well known.
To die of pissing out my bones.
Yeah. Nature gives you brain cancer. Nature allows women to die in childbirth, etc. The list goes on. I don't see what's so great about that, but it doesn't really fit their vibe. They're thinking more like, granola.
That's what they're thinking at all times.
That's more their speed.
Granola. Do you want to get vaccinated? Granola. No, granola. Fuck you.
Granola, yoga, yeah, flowy robes.
Weed.
Yeah, weed. That's natural, man. Type number 2, which can become type number 3, I thought was, as you mentioned, like the anti-state libertarian character that doesn't believe the government should be able to force you to do anything, believes in bodily autonomy, apart from usually abortion. The people that think that the government shouldn't be able to give them vaccines are often the same people that think pregnant women should be forced to carry them, even if it was a rape baby. So that's kind of fun. But there's also a grain of truth in these ones. I think there's definitely some prior good reasons to be at least skeptical of pharma companies, because they're profit-driven machines and have many, many cases of lying to people in the past for money. So the government also, whichever government it is, will have lied in the past about certain things or miscommunicated certain things. So I think skepticism to a degree is warranted here, but this can also slide into type 3, which again, as you mentioned, conspiracy crackpot, who at this point skepticism's left the building and it's just full on la la land, but there's microchips in vaccines to track you or turn you off or whatever. And people that buy into this usually buy into a bunch of other conspiracy theories as well. And my favorite thing about this one is, vaccines have got microchips to track you. I'm not having that. It's like, but you're also welded to a phone, which is the most sophisticated privacy invasion device ever devised.
Yeah, you're posting your location at all times voluntarily. Yeah. Although I do know someone where he was conspiracy minded. That's the anti-vaxxer I dropped a hint at in a previous episode, who most of the day left his phone in a Faraday cage in his house and just checked it every now and then.
Yeah, good for him. He's at least consistent.
Yeah, but he was online talking to us through Teams and stuff for like 8 to 10 hours a day doing his work.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, if the government really wants to spy on you, I think they're going to manage it. You're going to have to try a little harder, than that.
I think that the conspiracy theories rarely come in ones. They're a bit like rats. If you see one conspiracy theory, there's just like another 20 that you haven't seen. Because
at that point, all trust in government and institutions and official narratives has evaporated, and you're vulnerable to anything at that point, to have got to this point.
I think there's another type that maybe falls into some of yours or that you might have missed, and I'll get to a quite good summary from someone I found online in a bit. But I wondered if you want to just briefly go through some history of anti-vax.
The history of anti-vax is basically the same as the history of vaccines, right?
Mm-hmm.
It started at the same time. So in the 15th century, ancient Chinese medicine had discovered that if you blow smallpox scabs up the nostrils of people, they tended to not get smallpox and die after that. And that was called variolation, I believe. And for a long time, that's basically what we had for vaccines. That practice left China with the trade routes and was adopted in some other places. But the beginning of modern vaccines, as we understand it, was Edward Jenner, who was a doctor, I think.
Yep. There was quite a good BBC article which nicely summed up how old the practice of vaccination in the form that we know it now, more or less, is, but also highlighted some of the history, because you're right, the two things go hand in hand. As long as there's been vaccines, there's been people who oppose them. So if we set the scene for smallpox, which is the focus of the start of it. So smallpox is a horrible disease. It's defined by a rash of painful pustules across your body and has been one of the most lethal in human history, apart from something like the bubonic plague. Smallpox is estimated to have killed like 300 million people in the 20th century alone.
And it had about a 30% death rate. If you got it, 30% of the time you're going to die.
Yep. 1 in 3 of those survived. The other third were left blind, and almost all of them are scarred when you get smallpox.
It's only fractionally more dangerous than cave diving.
Yeah, I was wondering if you were going to say that. Or taunting your wife about her outfit before you leave the house.
That is surely just lethal.
But it's so bad that, it's the earliest form of germ, well, maybe not the earliest form, but it's a primitive form of germ warfare was used with smallpox blankets infamously in the US colonization of the West, when they would give Native American peoples blankets under the guise of being helpful. But they knew that, smallpox patients had been using these blankets, and they just knew that the native population would therefore contract smallpox and basically get wiped out by it.
That is fucked. I'd not heard that one before.
Oh yeah. No, that's how the West was won. Smallpox blankets. So you're right. There was a UK doctor called Edward Jenner who developed the first version of a smallpox vaccine in 1796, and he was hopeful that this might change history. From his observations, milkmaids were curiously immune to smallpox, likely because they had prior come into contact with the infection called cowpox, which was related.
Edward Jenner spent a lot of time studying milkmaids very closely.
Just twitching his curtains, watching them, like looking at which ones had pustules and which ones didn't.
God, their skin, it's so beautiful and unmarred by pox.
No, it needed to be slightly poxy. He liked a slightly poxy milkmaid.
Oh, if they had cowpox but not smallpox.
Yep.
The ones that had cowpox, the ones that they observed didn't get smallpox later.
Yeah, he thought that if they'd had cowpox, which is similar but not as lethal, they seemed to not be getting smallpox when it was ravaging a community. So to test this and confer the smallpox immunity, he took some material from a milkmaid's cowpox sore and injected it into the arm of an 8-year-old child. Which, as far as experiments go, fairly unacceptable by modern standards.
Well, that one has some ethical questions, but what he followed up with was then injecting the child with smallpox.
Or just sent him home. I don't know.
He injected him with smallpox.
Oh, great. Good.
So it's, taking a gamble. If his vaccine hadn't worked, 30% chance of death. But luckily, little Timmy survived, and Edward Jenner was a hero.
Yeah, I quite liked the naming, though. So he took the name for this procedure from the Latin for cow, vaca, and thus we have vaccines.
That's a cool fact. I only learnt that today.
So by the early 1800s, in a series of controlled experiments by Jenner and other doctors, they showed that inoculation was extremely effective, and it granted immunity against smallpox in well over 95% of those people vaccinated. So public health authorities worldwide took action to roll this out. In the UK, this resulted in several vaccination acts, which were passed in 1840, 1853, and 1871, which made immunization for children first free and then compulsory. But almost immediately, another challenge emerged, and this is where we get anti-vaxxers, because anti-vaccination leagues sprung up around the country. The most prominent arguments from them...
We want smallpox. We want smallpox.
I like being pussy. Gives me something to pick.
We don't have much entertainment yet. Ain't got no TV.
Watching Gary writhe on the floor and scratch at his skin's the best thing I've seen since I saw that milkmaid earlier this week.
Don't take it away from us, please. What were they saying? Something like that.
That was it. They just liked the scabs. No, it was the religious sector.
Hooray!
They were claiming that vaccination was unnatural and therefore bad, like you mentioned earlier.
Yay. Organised religion on the wrong side of history at every opportunity.
Other people sensationalized the origins of the vaccine, saying that it would turn people into cows. It was... There's printed stuff from like Punch magazine of people queuing up to be vaccinated and then like growing these grotesque hoofs and stuff like that. The newspaper cartoons have always been pretty ruthless. In the 1800s, they were quite on point with stuff like this. They loved a bit of grotesque satire.
Well, they wanted to sell papers. It didn't really matter to them, I suppose, what the truth was.
And this is just staggering that this kind of argument still gets made even in the last widely rolled out vaccines when people were claiming that it was going to change your DNA. Like, a vaccination is not going to turn you into a fucking cow, just like it's not going to be able to change your DNA, the blueprint for a human.
Not a single instance of this happening.
Then there were some others that were claiming without any evidence that vaccines were secretly employed by doctors to enrich themselves because, like any kind of flim-flam man, they claim they've got the cure and people have to come and pay for it. But it was false even at the time because pioneers like Jenner had refused to profit off of vaccines.
That's quite remarkable.
And there was this argument that making vaccinations compulsory was against people's body autonomy, which you also mentioned, and their personal freedoms, even though it was having an already visible impact on infant mortality rates, which were disproportionately high from the disease. Poor immune system has not been exposed to anything like that before, and has, to this day, the smallpox vaccination has caused a documented and accepted 40% decrease in infant mortality at that time. It's pretty big.
So the problem with this vaccine was because they took cowpox, which happened to be similar enough to smallpox to confer immunity. It worked great for smallpox vaccines, but they couldn't generalize it. They didn't know how to do it for other diseases. So for a while, because they didn't have the germ theory of disease, for a while, this was the only vaccine that was around.
I guess no one's had anything like the bubonic plague that we can just give you bubonic plague light. All of the pustules, none of the death.
They didn't know that that's how it worked yet.
There was also an article, the same article actually dropped some interesting statistics which relate this kind of process back to recent times. So in 2019, the World Health Organization declared that vaccination hesitancy was one of the world's top 10 threats to public health. And measles, for example, is so highly infectious that each single case leads to 12 to 18 additional cases. And measles requires 95% of the population to be vaccinated against it to provide this firewall in herd immunity. So in the year 2000 in the US, they had high vaccination compliance, which meant that the disease was declared virtually eliminated. But since then, the coverage has dropped, and now communities below the herd immunity level are seeing the US battling a growing number of outbreaks of measles.
Measles is making a comeback, baby.
Vaccination hesitancy. So anti-vaxxers, effectively through whatever channel, whatever reason they believe in being against vaccination, have managed to uneradicate the measles in the US.
Wonderful achievement.
Good job, guys. You're out there doing God's work, apparently.
Well, literally. The church was against it to start with. Well done.
Yep.
So walking it back a bit, we just finished the evolution of vaccination technology.
Yeah, that'd be good. Tell us more. History bomb us.
So Jenner's smallpox vaccine was a massive success, but for nearly a century it remained a one-off anomaly. Doctors knew that it worked, but because the prevailing medical theory of the time was still miasma theory, which was the belief that diseases were spread by noxious, quote, bad air, they didn't understand why it worked. So the transition...
Miasma literally means bad air.
Yeah.
No, sorry, that's malaria. Malaria. Yeah, that's where that comes
malaria.
from. That's what they thought, that malaria was caused by swamp gases. They hadn't equated it to being carried by mosquitoes, which happen to breed and be prevalent in boggy, moist environments. So malaria is literally called like bad air.
Bad air. So in the late 1800s, Louis Pasteur conclusively proved that germ theory, that specific microscopic pathogens cause specific diseases, was a valid model of disease. Pasteur realized that if you could artificially weaken a pathogen in a lab, you could introduce it to the body to train the immune system without actually causing the disease. Using this foundation, Pasteur developed the next generation of vaccines, creating successful inoculations for chicken cholera, anthrax, and famously rabies. In honor of Jenner's pioneering work with cows, Pasteur suggested that the term vaccination be extended to cover all protective inoculations, regardless of the animal origin.
I think there was some controversy over calling things inoculations because that implied taking the disease itself, right? And people got kind of worried about calling things inoculations, and vaccination was a more acceptable term as well. And I believe, if I know my alternative history, this was where Louis Pasteur used his shrink ray, shrunk himself down to the size of a microorganism, beat up the virus, and then re-injected it into someone because he had weakened it himself physically with his fists.
That's what I've heard. This set off a golden age of vaccinology across the 20th century, leading to the development of vaccines for diphtheria, tetanus, measles, polio, and pertussis, which has got another name, which I've forgotten. So yeah, the journey that began with ancient doctors blowing aged scabs up the noses of children culminated in 1980 when the World Health Organization officially declared smallpox, the monster that started it all, completely eradicated from the planet. Pretty cool.
Take that, smallpox, you cunt.
Have it?
I mean, all this really shows us when we've got the protests against it, and it's good to know how it became a more accepted and widely used practice. But it tells us that outright hostility and hesitancy to vaccination as a medical practice and as a public health barrier has been around for quite a long time. It's not necessarily that it's a new thing, it's just blown up on social media as anything has. It's just having its time in the spotlight once again.
Yeah. I mean, obviously COVID accelerated this because it relied on a disease, a vaccine, public health, a quickly developed one, various government programs mandating that you needed to have it, or you needed to have it to do certain things. And so that obviously inflamed all of this, but it's not, as you said, it's not the cause of anti-vaccination thinking.
No. I was going to talk about another flavor of anti-vaxxer that might get covered slightly by your type number one, the kind of health guru, but not quite. And this came from a really good article, like really in-depth, from Maclean's.ca. I think it's called Maclean's. Anyway, they've previously published it in a printed magazine article from September 2025. And this was written by an author who tells her story of going from being kind of a normal person, getting her kids vaccinated. She then fell down the rabbit hole and became a total anti-vaxxer and has gone full circle and is now a vaccination nurse. And it really shed a very personal light on parts of the anti-vaxxer community and maybe gives us a view of why some people fall into this mindset.
Tell me a story, Andrew.
I will do so. I will try and summarize it and paraphrase it for brevity. But if this is a topic, listeners, that you are interested in, I really recommend reading it because it's very well written and it's very personal to this woman.
What was it called?
It was just quite interesting. So this is called, you can find it on macleans.ca, and it's called Confessions of an Ex-Anti-Vaxxer by Lydia Green, and she's writing under a pseudonym.
That is a Ron Seal book, does exactly what it says on the tin.
Yeah, exactly.
Confessions of an Anti-Vaxxer, that's what it is.
Bam!
Bang tidy.
So she is an immigrant, or she's from immigrant parents from the former Yugoslav, and she grew up and lived in Canada. She explained how her journey into anti-vax came from being a new parent, and she had an increasing worry about doing the best for her young child. She mentions having Crohn's disease, which flares up every now and then, which caused complications for her own health. And essentially, from the birth of her first child, she felt lied to and let down by doctors and the healthcare system in general, which is strange because you hear quite a lot of positive things about the healthcare system in Canada. But to start with, she was kind of given a C-section when she didn't necessarily need it, but it was a precautionary measure, but the doctors sort of pushed it on her anyway. And her experience got worse when she had difficulties breastfeeding, and she had some adverse reactions when she got her daughter the standard sort of multi-vaccine that new babies get. And this wasn't in the dark ages. This wasn't, even 50 years ago. This was 2008. But she said that she felt treated with scorn and neglect by the healthcare experts that she had access to. And in her desperation, she turned to some internet forums for advice and answers. I guess it's easy to write it off when you say, I'm going to listen to someone on the forum, as opposed to these people that are highly educated and have a practice and they can go into hospital at any time. But if
those people validate your feelings and your experience, and the medical professionals have been assholes for one reason or other.
If you feel that they've given you bad advice, or when you phone them up, they just tell you, it's no problem. That's not really a worry. If it was a real emergency, you'd go to the ER. That kind of thing was the responses she felt like she was getting. But when she went on, just in her own time, just desperately looking for any kind of answers when she's got a screaming child at 10 o'clock at night, and she's wondering if anyone else has had the same experience, she was on, she said, mothering.com specifically, which had been a defunct article place that was now then dedicated to natural parenting. Anyway, she received advice from other users there, and she was treated with what she said felt like empathy and understanding. And moreover, some of their advice worked, which I think was specifically around breastfeeding tips, rather than just being told, "I'll just give your baby formula, it doesn't matter." And that then made her go back to that source more often and read more of the posts, listen to more of the views. And I think that's how they got to where that's how it started to stick. So over the next few years, her paranoia...
Institutional trust collapsing.
And I'll get to it in a second, but this kind of building of someone validating you and a growing sense of community that you're not the crazy one. Maybe it's someone else that's doing something wrong. So over the next few years, she got more and more paranoid about her kids' safety from reading these often outrageous views of people on the net. And she said when she first started to read them, this is silly, like I'm pro-medicine. But she kept reading them anyway. And it got to the point where she was one of those parents that was refusing to do things like buy baby foods in stores because she didn't trust what was inside it. Or she would send her kids off to, I think she said she sent her kid off to parties with homemade muffins because she didn't want them to have anything else at this kid's birthday party because she didn't know what was in it. Or
she didn't know what was in the muffins that she made.
No, she did because she made them at herself.
But no, she didn't. She thought she did, but she got a bag of flour that she hadn't farmed and milled herself, a bunch of chocolate that she hadn't grown and processed herself, a bunch of sugar that she didn't, it's just white powder, could be anything, read the ingredients, trusted that, and decided, yeah, okay.
Maybe they were dust and skin flake muffins. I didn't get the recipe. She carefully cultivated them herself.
I understand this, but the trouble with not trusting things that you can't see for yourself is there's no sensible place to draw the line. You can just draw an arbitrary line that makes no sense, I guess. But once you start down that road, pretty soon you can't do anything if you're going to continue to be consistent.
Exactly the point that she was making. So the example I thought was crazier than the muffins one was saying that she wouldn't let her kid have dinner at a friend's house because she didn't know what kind of cooking oil the mother was going to use to prepare the meal. So it's like, even if I say that, I'm buying farm fresh, non-GMO chicken, but what did you cook it in? Where did that oil come from? That's next level, right?
Is it a plastic bottle?
And she just got sucked into this echo chamber, and the fear mongering there, like the people that scream the loudest are the ones that get heard and read the most. She said that this anti-vaxxing kind of becomes your whole identity, along with eating healthy or being healthy or thinking you're doing the right thing for your kids. It becomes a lifestyle practice. And she said that you would figure out how to look for signs in other parents who might also be crunchy. Is that a term you've come across?
Yeah.
Crunchy?
I like that. Crunchy.
So she said that this...
a bit hippie.
Became a community. So that's a good quote here. Yeah, we talked so much that it felt like a sisterhood. We checked in with each other. We validated each other's fears. At the time, these friendships felt real and lasting. That she was talking about the things that they would look for in other parents was the ones that had mostly hand-knitted clothes for their babies, or the ones that were bringing out clearly reused glass jars that weren't labeled, that meant they were mushing their own baby food because they didn't trust the preservatives and whatever. Or people that let their kids suck on some kind of like amber teething necklaces. Apparently these were all good tells that someone might be open to your way of thinking.
Coded identity giveaways in real life.
I don't know if they went as far as drawing little fish in the sand and waiting for the next person to dot the little eye on it, but that's...
Is that a Christian one?
Yeah. That's why the people have the fish thing on the back of their cars. If you drew a little fish in the sand with your sandal covertly when you were talking to someone, if they put the little eye in for you, if they dotted his little face with an eyeball for the fish, then that's how you knew that they were also a Christian.
Cunning.
Anyway, but this has come up before in other topics, that all it really takes is for someone to embrace a fringe or a radical view is a community, and this shared sense that someone's listening to you and validating your fears or giving you positive feedback. It was like the red pill stuff, I think.
Yeah.
That's how a lot of these younger guys got sucked into it. People could be saying outrageous things online.
You're in a community and you're gaining an identity. You're someone that's awake to reality. You're resistant to manipulation. You're smarter. You've outsmarted, the man, them, and it all starts getting folded up in your identity, your self-concept.
You feel like there's a group of people telling you that you're right and this is actually the truth. And why doesn't everyone else know it?
It's like Flat Earth in that regard.
Yeah,
it is. Flat Earth is a community of people that think, that like each other for validating their beliefs and making them feel like they belong somewhere.
This is where what she was saying also crosses over with some of the other topics, because she thinks that the people benefiting from anti-vax mentality are not necessarily those who believe what they're saying online. So we've heard this before in the specifically the looks maxing stuff, that people are spreading misinformation online, playing on other people's fears and profiting for them. And it's the same sort of tactics that they use once they've got you, or once you've read something. It's like, subscribe to my newsletter to know more, buy these specialist products.
Smash that subscribe button.
Yeah. Or what's the, like, oh, buy our course. Yeah, subscribe to our course where you're going to learn more.
We'll tell you the truth about vaccinations.
I
to keep your kids safe.
Have a little bit longer quote from her.
I think anti-vaxxing can come from quite a good place sometimes. Like, this woman wanted to do what was best for her children, and she got some other rewards along the way about, belonging and identity and stuff, but it was motivated from a place of keeping her children from harm.
That's it. It wasn't that she was all peace, love, and I only eat organic vegetables because I'm trying to protect the food chain. It wasn't a conspiracy nut to her. It wasn't, I don't trust the state because the government's trying to put listening devices up my anus. It was just from someone who felt let down and started to build a distrust.
And there was a welcoming home for her.
Yep. So she says, the anti-vax movement isn't simply a grassroots network of concerned parents. It's an industry. It's lucrative. They're selling supplements, ebooks, courses, and products. It operates on a simple premise. If you're not vaccinating your kids, you need to protect them somehow, and here's a bunch of things you can buy to do that. The biggest voices in the space publish books, make public appearances, manage huge social media platforms, or run Substacks with paying subscribers. They earn big money. Parents who feel abandoned by the healthcare system gravitate towards anyone who says, I believe you. If that someone has a degree and a book for sale, all the better. There's an entire confirmation bias economy. So Children's Health Defense, for instance, was chaired by Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Oh, yeah.
He started
a famously stable man
as an environmental lawyer. He was concerned about mercury, and even though mercury was removed from most vaccines in the 90s, he kept going. During COVID, Robert Malone came onto the scene. He was a doctor, chemist, and vaccine skeptic. He launched a Substack and quickly amassed a huge audience. Thousands of people pay $7 a month to read about the impacts and dangers of vaccines, and that adds up fast.
Thousands of people pay $7 a month to feel validated in their pre-existing beliefs.
For someone to yell absolute nonsense at them because he claims he's a doctor and has done some research and stuff.
The thing I love about this is, it's like, I don't trust you because you're a doctor and you're part of the system, you're just going to profit off this. However, I do trust this guy because he's a doctor. You can trust what he says. He's done research, man. It's like, wait, but hang on.
I don't trust groups of doctors, but this one individual doctor.
Yeah, why this guy? Okay.
He's the loudest. His views align with mine the most closely. I don't have to think about it beyond that.
Something I find funny about this is it sounds like the anti-vax world is guilty of all of the things that they accuse the mainstream government vaccine world of being, profiting, being unethical, selling you shit you don't need, fear-mongering. Yeah, that's what they say about the vaccines, yet it seems to be that's how the anti-vax one operates.
Well, to kind of skip to the end of this woman's...
Not that it's obvious, I guess, but yeah, sorry, carry on.
...story, it was sort of that, not exactly that hypocrisy, but it was hypocrisy in the community that made her come full circle again. And it was during the COVID pandemic that kind of convinced her, when people in these same online groups were refusing the public health advice beyond vaccines. So even if you don't believe in giving your kids medicine that you can't see and you don't know has been tested because you haven't done the science yourself, they were refusing to do things like wear face masks and sanitizers. And she saw that her community were now fighting against some of the stuff that she believed they'd been fighting for in the first place. So, like, hey, hold on, these all seem like ways that we can protect our kids without any interference. We just have to, keep them isolated, basically. And these ones were like, no, we should all meet up in public and we should let our unvaccinated kids play together. And she then noted that as soon as she started speaking out about that online, the same people turned on her very quickly. Yeah. Became super vicious in their attacks. Things like hate mail, death threats, spamming her job and her normal life with how she was a shill and all this kind of stuff. And in the end, it paid off. As I said, she became a vaccine nurse. She caught up with her kids' vaccinations. And she said that she now tries to go out there and help people that are hesitant about getting vaccinated, not just tell them her long story, but just make them feel a bit more comforted if they've made the first step of coming forward and thinking about vaccination. And she also noted that since she did get her kids vaccinated, she had a much more positive impression of the healthcare system.
So what was the thing that actually drove her back to being on the side of vaccines?
The fact that the COVID pandemic was there and visible and happening everywhere, and also causing complications with, or could cause complications for other illnesses that her kids weren't vaccinated against. So it kind of all rolled into one. She talks about how she was so worried about that one in particular, she thought, oh, maybe we should just get this one. And it kind of snowballed from there.
Interesting. So she never really disbelieved in vaccines as such.
No, I think just when she was in the most paranoid time with the becoming organic, vegan.
When she was in the question everything part of the...
Yeah. I mean, she had kept her kids from what should be the mandatory, or the usual ones that kids would get.
So I think vaccination it's different from normal conspiracy theories because it actually affects your health, and it can affect other people's health as well on a grand scale. Unlike, Hollow Earth, sure, mate, you believe that. It's not harming anyone else, really. It's not even particularly harming yourself, but whatever. So it's unusual from that regard. And also, I think it's uniquely vulnerable to conspiracy thinking because the benefits of vaccination are basically invisible. Don't get a disease. So if it works, nothing happens to you. And it's difficult to remember, oh yeah, the last 5 years, I didn't have smallpox for any of that.
It's not often that I think how glad I am to not have smallpox. I just take it for granted.
Yeah, exactly. And the mechanism it works through is complicated. It's difficult to understand as a layperson if you're not a medical doctor. And you're essentially, someone's injecting some colourless liquid into your arm that works through a mechanism that you don't necessarily fully understand, and it has effects you can't really fully see. Apart from side effects, which are kind of emotionally, what's the word? It's very apparent when you've got a side effect. It's like, holy shit, this bad thing's happening to me right now. Vaccine bad. The fact you don't get smallpox later, you don't even notice. So it kind of fundamentally relies on trust on a whole bunch of stuff in order for you to think, yeah, vaccine is good. And so when she's making her muffins herself, she feels like she's understanding what's going on because she saw what's gone into it. And it's a level of understandability that we're comfortable with. And she knows what's happened here. Apart from, as we said, you don't really know because you didn't grow the flour yourself. You didn't refine the chocolate yourself, etc., etc. But
you didn't follow the whole food chain, so you can't be personally responsible for every single element of it.
Yeah.
But maybe it's that's it. You feel like you have an element of control over that, whereas what's getting injected into your arm, you don't. And if that trust's been broken by an institution or the healthcare system that's giving you it, you can see why people would sort of turn away from it, especially if they're already vulnerable from being concerned parents, i.e. when you've got a child for the first time, you don't know what to do. You can read as many books as you want, but no one really knows what it's like to be a parent for the first time. So you're going to be in a space that you're kind of ready to be super paranoid about stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I think that comes from an understandable place, but there's other motivations as well, because the world is complex, as we've said before, and it's one of the other things that makes vaccines and medicine and lots of scientific stuff, climate change, for instance, vulnerable to conspiracy thinking, is that scientists, who are basically the creators of knowledge in our world, that's the whole point of them, is they communicate in terms of probabilities and statistics and uncertainty, grey areas a lot of the time. Scientists have to be really, really sure before they'll willingly say in a black and white way, yes, this is good. It's just kind of not how they communicate, to be like, well, in 95% of cases, it shows a beneficial effect, boosting immunity by 70%. But obviously there are some cases, a small percentage will suffer this and that and blah, blah, blah. And sometimes there are other compounding factors that make it less effective or more effective. And that's a lot of very boring stuff to listen to. People are cognitively strained with their daily lives and all the stuff they have going on. They don't want to hear all that. And it's just easier to condense things into good or bad.
When you hear someone talking like that as well, it almost sounds like a very political answer. It's just like, you're just hedging your bets. You don't really fucking know anything, do you?
Is it good or bad?
Yeah.
Yes or no? Yes or no?
You can't give me an answer because you don't know, egghead.
Yeah, and then scientists would try and communicate this to government or public-facing bodies, and some combination of them not fully understanding it themselves and needing to communicate in a more black and white way loses the nuance, and then government's like, yes, this is a really good thing, or this is a bad thing, or whatever. And when the exceptions pop out, people go back, point the finger at the institution that said to them, you said this was good. I was like, yeah, we did say it was good. Well, but this bad thing happened, so I don't trust you anymore. It's like, yeah, we did know that the bad thing was possible, but we didn't really think you'd want to hear that, so we didn't tell you because you wouldn't fucking listen. So
we didn't think you'd understand.
Yeah, and there isn't really a right or wrong answer here other than giving people the time to sit down and explain it and having them with the inclination to want to learn it. And basically, I mean, I don't mind admitting that without my scientific background, I would just take all of this on trust. In fact, even with my scientific background, I basically took it all on trust and then found out later the mechanism of how it works. And even then, I'm still kind of taking it on faith because I didn't make the vaccine myself. I don't understand all the research that went into it. I don't look up every single vaccine that I've been given and look at all the side effects and stuff. I just virtually blindly go to the doctor and be like, yep, shoot me up, doc. And I kind of trust that it'll be okay.
My viewpoint is similar in that I will trust what's given to me, but it's probably more from a reckless disregard for life in that I'm getting something jabbed in me for free and I hope it's lethal. Is this going to end me, doc? No, of course it's not. Oh, what's the fucking point then? Where's the good stuff?
Ugh, another day on Earth, said Andrew reluctantly. So here's a question for you. It's the one we asked at the beginning. How do you maintain healthy skepticism towards powerful institutions without sliding into paranoid delusion?
I guess the only answer is to educate yourself as far as possible from viable sources. But sitting down and doing the reading about what you're about to go and get injected when someone's telling you get this injection or you can't go outside is not to belittle the rest of the population. But no one wants to sit down and do that, right? No one wants to try and read through...
Who's got the time?
3 or 4 different medical journals that are published online. How do you trust what's published online anyway? Isn't it easier for me to watch a 30-second reel of an angry man screaming that estrogen, the water's turning frogs gay, etc.?
It's turning the frogs gay.
Yes, that's easier for me to understand than trying to read through medical journals. And as a layman, the easiest answer is the right one.
Yeah, I really don't know what the answer to this is, to be honest, because governments sometimes lie, corporations sometimes or often behave badly, regulatory bodies can fail because they're all made of people, and even people with good intentions can fail. But it doesn't mean every institution is corrupt or every vaccine is dangerous or every conspiracy is true in it. Yeah, I think it's genuinely difficult to know where to draw the line here. I try to look at incentives people have and try and determine if I had these incentives, what kind of behavioural pattern would I follow? Such as pharma companies, for instance, they are incentivized to make money, sure, but not at any cost. If they get banned from producing vaccines or drugs because they killed a bunch of people because they lied about it, it's going to be bad for profits. So their goal is kind of, yes, we want to make money. Yes, we're willing to lie about it sometimes, as the past has proven. But I kind of think, well, they can't, as long as your regulators are okay, they can't take things to such extremes and such callous disregard for human life that they would, well, actually, I'm not even sure, because there are examples of them pumping out stuff that, like, not a pharma company, but DuPont Chemicals, they put tetraethyl lead in petrol long after they knew that it caused madness and cancer, and they had people in their plants making it, going mad and getting cancer, and this went on for years and years and years. So actually, I really don't know. I genuinely don't know how to answer this question.
I think it maybe if it gives you any kind of solace or comfort, it can help to look at things from a public health perspective as well. Like what's to be gained if this thing that I'm about to get injected with does actually kill off 50% of the population, or there's a high chance I'm going to die? Who benefits from that? Well, not that many people, because they need us drones to do all the work and to keep paying our taxes and to buy products, because that's all we are, the walking wallets.
Yeah, I completely agree in that worldview. That's the purpose of the normal human as far as the government/corporations are concerned. You're there to be extracted from, to be parted from what meager wealth you've gathered in virtually any means necessary. There's just a few things standing in the way protecting us.
I mean, public health as an idea has been around protecting the masses, even if let's say the 1% are not particularly keen on the masses, that they know they need you. So things like providing sanitation and clean drinking water and stuff, when people started moving into urban environments, when we talked about the Victorian moustaches and how public health crisis has led to improved standard of living. That wasn't done out of altruism. That was done because you need workers. You need a general population, no matter how high up the food chain you think you are. So going against public health orders doesn't really make too much sense, because they're not incentivized to get rid of you.
That's true. You're worth much more alive. So you're worth much more alive and in debt bondage than you are dead and non-economically productive.
Mm.
So there you go. That's a sufficiently cynical view that I'm willing to use that to base the rest of my worldview on. Okay, the government probably doesn't want me dead because I currently pay taxes. So that makes me useful.
Yeah, it's when you start going off the grid, you need to worry.
Yeah, and pharma companies don't want me dead either, unless they made a lot of money doing it. But if the penalties for killing everyone outweigh the costs, then it's not worth it.
No, they need to just keep buying all those upper downers and penile misfunction pills and stuff. Stuff to suppress your giant boner.
And things like doctors. I am fairly trusting of doctors, especially in the UK, when they don't have huge financial incentives to even become doctors. It's expensive to get qualified. And the salaries, once you become a consultant, are good, definitely, but they're not like life on easy street forever good. And I think most doctors get into medicine for the right motivations because it's sufficiently difficult that it weeds people out that get in for the wrong ones. And yes, doctors are still fallible and they can't be up on every single bit of information. But on the whole, I think the system is selective enough. You end up with the right kind of people at the other end. And our legislature prevents doctors from profiting directly from recommending drugs and things like that, which I don't know if it's still a thing in the US, but definitely has been in the past, where doctors are much more vulnerable to being corrupted, I guess.
I think that it's still, because the healthcare system in the US is much more commercialized, there's definitely a system of kickbacks or incentives from specific pharma companies for doctors to prescribe certain medicines, even if that means, the two things are identical, but one is twice as expensive. Then if the pharma rep comes around and says, hey, let's give you that free weekend at the beach house twice a year, if you prescribe more of this drug, then they will.
And then, that leaves the door open to you questioning the institution.
So that all sounds like a very somber and serious discussion around almost medical ethics. Is there anything you want to talk about in a normal way before we look at some of the more wild sides of anti-vaxxers? Because I've got a few fun ones. Maybe that'll lift the mood. Some of the mad conspiracy theory angles. Okay,
before we get into absurdity, I would quite like to go over. I've got two stories, one very short and one a bit longer.
I think you are going to talk about the vaccines cause autism stuff.
Yes, that's the longer story. So this is a massive thing in public health, particularly the pro-vaccination, anti-vaccination debate, is vaccines cause autism, or to be more truthful, vaccines do not cause autism. But there was a paper published by a British doctor in 1998, and its conclusion was the combined MMR vaccine is linked to autism in children. It causes autism was the conclusion. And this was picked up by newspapers and by vaccine skeptics, and it kind of blew up into a piece of evidence. And it's very emotionally vivid, and it's stuck in people's minds. And around 7 years after its publishing, it was officially debunked. And around 12 years after its publishing, the journal it was published in, The Lancet, which is a prestigious medical journal, finally retracted it. But it had it live for 12 years, and it's been completely and thoroughly debunked, but the damage it's done continues to linger on. People often incorrectly cite it. But what is really appalling about this is how it came to pass. It wasn't just some doctor that did a bad study.
Hold on. Wait. Let's name and shame him. So this was Andrew Wakefield.
The
former British doctor.
Yeah.
He was eventually de-licensed by medical authorities. And for his, what was the quote? His deceit and callous disregard for children in his care. That's the reason he was de-licensed. But yeah, you're right. It's mad that he published this piece that blew up and has stuck in people's mind in the public unconscious in 1998, and it didn't get taken down until 2010.
He profited personally from this. So how it came about was a lawyer came to him and said, I want you to do a study that shows autism is caused by the MMR vaccine, because I've got some parents who are paying me to sue the NHS because this is what they're alleging. So here's some money, and I want you to go off and do that. And Andrew Wakefield profited to the tune of about £450,000, mostly through consulting fees of £150 an hour. And that's pretty bad. But what is appalling about this is that money was not the lawyer's money. It wasn't the parents' money. He applied to a fund, a government NHS fund for legal costs to be taken care of for poor families. They gave him the money to do this, and then they sort of laundered it back through a hospital through a charity arm. And so this was public money that was used to commit this study. And worse still, the children that were picked were not just randomly sampled. They were gathered from anti-vaccine communities. People are drawn into the study like this. They were paid for their blood as well at some point, I think. And they were treated as normal patients. So the normal NHS bore the costs of doing the expensive tests on them, many of which were not medically necessary and would be considered battery, I think, in a legal sense. Things like lumbar punctures and these painful, potentially risky procedures. And as it slowly all came to light, so this guy's profited. So £500,000 in the late 90s is more like £1 million now. He's personally profited by about £1 million worth of public money. And the crazy thing is he didn't strictly do anything illegal. Just none of this stuff it was set up in this way, but it should never have been possible. But it was.
I read that he was actually being funded by the personal injury lawyers, and those clients were suing MMR vaccine makers.
That's right. Oh, yes, sorry, carry on. I just remembered something else.
Yeah, he's taking money from them,
but it's public money.
I think it is illegal because it's bad science. It's confirmation bias.
Well, the punishment came down in the form of he was struck off from the medical register and not allowed to practice medicine again. However, no criminal charges were brought against him. And the other powerfully unethical thing he did was he also happened to own a patent for a single vaccine jab, not the combined one. His contention was that the combined one causes autism, but the single one doesn't. So he stood potentially profit hugely from this if people were like, okay, well, we'll have the single one then. Oh, I just happen to own a patent in that. So it was a diabolical scheme, and he faced no criminal consequences for it. Okay, he was struck off the medical register, but he profited to the tune of $1 million in today's money, which he never had to give back. And he went out to the US, but he couldn't practice medicine, but he set himself up as an anti-vaccination motivational speaker, and that's what he still does to this day, I believe. So this guy's a real piece of shit.
He is a piece of shit, and what's worse is that even after his research was debunked, he was struck off. He had those fairly damning comments read about him in his delicensing, calling him deceitful and callous. He then doubled down on it, and he went off and made an independent film to further attack things like the Center for Disease Control in the US. And he just constantly kept himself and this whole topic in the media spotlight, which then spreads this fear that maybe he was right because he's just noisy, to tens of thousands of more people who are then not getting their kids vaccinated, not just against MMR, but because they heard him say vaccine equals autism. They stopped getting their kids vaccinated at all.
He's done untold damage.
He has, because people still quote it.
Yeah.
As it was an article about him, or this whole thing in Time magazine, and they put it as, in the age of social media and the frequent distrust of authorities and increasing epidemic threats, we should all learn the skill of critical thinking and informed skepticism to discern life-saving facts from fatal fictions. But he's out there loudly peddling those fatal fictions. So it's difficult for your everyday person to ignore something like that when he says, trust me, I'm a British doctor.
Yeah. And then you look into it and realize, okay, the funding came from a lawyer and it was bad science. Children were sourced incorrectly. Unethical tests were done. And he stood to profit personally because he owned this IP for a single vaccine. Okay, then when you start uncovering these facts, you might then look at his conclusions in a different light. Like, well, I think I might be a bit skeptical of this guy because what are his motivations here? Yeah, that's a crazy story. Absolutely crazy. The other story is much shorter, and that was after COVID, the mask, I don't know if we'd call them mask mandates in the UK, but there was a requirement to wear masks out in public, and you'd often see people wearing them under their noses.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember thinking at the time, like, you fucking idiot. Or either you're an idiot, you don't understand how the mask works, or this is a deliberate choice to stick it to the man. I'm like, okay, I'll technically wear a mask, but, I'm still going to breathe the air because I know best. I thought it's got to be one of these things. And then the mask rules ended and you didn't have to wear a mask anymore. And I still saw people out wearing them and wearing them incorrectly. And I was like, what the fuck is going on here? So wait a minute, you actually do think the mask is protecting you, but you're so, I don't want to just rag on them for being idiots, but you have so little real understanding of what's going on here. You're wearing this as a kind of a tokenistic ritual. I'm wearing a mask, I'm safe. Like, yeah, but you're not wearing it correctly. But I just couldn't believe that these beliefs could coexist. Like, I think I'm protecting myself, and I also don't know how masks work at all, so I don't understand it, but I think I'm safe.
There's a few things around that which I don't want to get into COVID bashing. I mean, South Park did a good job of like a 2-part film-length episode taking the piss out of it and referring to it as chin diapers because there were loads of people just wearing it on their chins just for the sake of saying they had the mask on their face. But you can still see it here every now and then, and it's not people that have come over from Asia that are tourists where they've got really bad air and they've been wearing them for years anyway because the smog and stuff is so terrible. These are like standard people on the street that are just walking down still wearing medical face masks in a bright sunny day in the middle of summer 5 years later, whatever. But the bit that I don't understand is you put the mask on when you're in a public crowded space to stop your germs spreading to each other, particularly when you're going to supermarkets or enclosed spaces. Outside, there's basically no point wearing one. And yet that's where I see people wearing them, like on the street.
Yeah, fascinating, really.
Yeah, there's a few other. So that was the first one I wanted to talk about as well. The vaccines, autism, absolute nonsense, complete scam, total fallacy. If you've heard it, discount it immediately and wash your ears out. Don't even think about absorbing it. But there's a few other more silly ones that are slightly more entertaining.
Hit me.
And I don't want to give them much credence by digging into them properly, nor do I want to further rot my brain with them. So this is just a quick rundown of some of the top ones that I found in the conspiracy space of anti-vaxxers. So as you mentioned before, sometimes they think, or sometimes they say loudly online, vaccines contain liquid microchips designed specifically by Bill Gates to track the global population via 5G cell towers.
Bill Gates personally.
Yeah. He gets name dropped.
Yeah, that's brilliant. You carry a phone, the most sophisticated privacy invasion device ever made, and you do it voluntarily and you pay monthly for it. He doesn't need to put a microchip in you.
You've put a microchip in yourself. How much closer can your technology can you get? This one was being pushed a lot in the COVID pandemic, and there was a prominent Dr. Christiane Northrup, who was a celebrity medic turned QAnon supporter, known for being one of the people that was spreading this idea of a plandemic, i.e. the pandemic.
It was deliberate.
Yep. So she's made a bunch of videos and conspiracy theories, and she shares this with her 500,000 followers, really getting the word out there. She says stupid things like, "There's never been a vaccine like this. It will fundamentally change our DNA." She falsely claimed that it contained animal DNA and metals that will make recipients into living antennas for 5Gs and force them to literally become slaves to the system.
If you went to someone and said, "Hey, I can put this chip in you and connect you to 5G anywhere in the world, so you'll always be able to check Facebook," they'd be like, "Okay, put it in me."
And then also give me the microchip.
Oi, oi.
Yeah, no. Microchips can't be liquefied. That's not a thing.
How would a human get 5? What does that mean? What does that look like?
I can't get 5G in the middle of my fucking house.
I've never seen 5G.
Yeah, it can't be liquefied. You can't fit microchips through a standard immunization needles. And the mRNA vaccine contains genetic instructions, salt, sugars, and fats. It does not contain bits of metal. No doctor is jabbing bits of metal into you.
Well, I could also believe that there are bits of metal in it, but for completely normal medical reasons. Like the vaccines that had mercury in them for a while. Mercury's toxic, but as we discovered, oxygen can be toxic in sufficient amounts. So in tiny amounts, mercury is fine and it had a useful effect. Is this thinking that, I don't want it because it's got chemicals in it? Everything is chemicals. What do you mean by chemicals? Do you mean man-made stuff? I guess that's what people mean, but...
My wife's a loud proponent of being microchipped. Not like a tracking one like a dog, but if you put like a little microchip in her wrist, she says, that had your contactless bank card thing and also your ID, so that instead of having to show your ID when someone says, "Are you old enough to buy alcohol," for example, or you need to prove your identity at the bank or whatever it is, scan the chip in your wrist. Okay, we know exactly who you are and all your details. See,
this is what I'm talking about. If you offered it to someone as a paid subscription, they'd be all over it. Dear me. That's going to be the death of us. People putting microchips in us. No thanks. I draw the line there.
I'm shoving microchips up myself all the time and nothing's happened to me.
Are you?
I can burp lightning.
I burp lightning and breathe 5G. What does it mean?
How many G's is too many G's? Anyway, sorry. There's another good one. This one was covered in the New Zealand Herald. Vaccines inject magnetic ingredients into the bodies, causing keys, coins, and utensils to stick to the injection site. Vaccines are going to turn you into Magneto from the X-Men.
But not a cool Magneto, just a shit Magneto that has his house keys stuck to his arm.
Someone beams a coin at you, it's going to stick there.
Yeah, I feel like that's pretty easily disprovable.
Yep.
Show me someone that's got a key stuck to their arm.
These skeptics claimed who had claimed that they'd been magnetized when they were later investigated by the New Zealand Herald. They started shifting the blame to government radiation rays when the objects fell off them.
Right, of course. Yeah, there's got to be another conspiracy theory responsible.
I swear it was doing it a minute ago.
The vaccines made it stick, and then the government anti-magneto rays fixed it. Shouldn't you be grateful? You're better. Congratulations.
The vaccine acts as a stealth sterilization agent and caused sudden infertility in 97% of all recipients.
Wow. That's a specific percentage. That's probably real then.
If you're that specific, how could it be wrong?
Mm.
That would mean that basically there would have been no babies born since 2020 or whatever. Yeah, I think it's fairly easy to disprove that one. And you've got medical institutes like Penn Medicine actively telling people to go and get vaccinated if you're pregnant or trying to conceive. So,
do you want to talk about, for instance, COVID and potential government overreach and the idea about collective responsibility versus personal? Can the government say you have to have this vaccine or your child has to have this vaccine?
If you buy into living as a part of a society and a community, there are certain things that you are sacrificing in order to do that. For example, obeying the law. You might not agree with some of the laws, but the majority are there to protect you as a person, as an individual, and a society as a whole. And living within those laws, even if you don't necessarily agree with them, is a cost to you of being included in society. And I think something like public health measures, when it comes to trying to vaccinate people for herd immunity, is another one of those personal freedoms that you should be prepared to comply with or live with the restrictions of not being fully in that society. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. Yeah, I think the only question I have about that is I didn't choose to be part of this society, really. There isn't really a way to opt out, not in a way that's incredibly destructive.
I mean, you've not fled the country, you've not stopped paying your taxes, you've not gone off the grid, and you enjoy the benefits of living in a society in that the police will come to your house if you report a crime. You can go down to
that used to be the case, but yeah.
You can go to the supermarket and you can buy whatever you want because the government is in part subsidizing some of the cost of, I don't know, farmers making milk and shit.
Yeah,
so,
this is true.
In a sense, you're kind of, maybe not implicitly, but by living where you do and basically going along with it, you are included in society, right?
Yeah, it's true. I'm not explicitly buying into it, but implicitly I am by not leaving. And there are things that come along with it. But yeah, in an ideal world, I would like it such that the government couldn't mandate that I have to have a vaccine or that my children don't have to have vaccines. But I also think you should never exercise that right. It's one of these things like, okay, you don't have to put this in your body. Like, thank you. I will now choose to put it in my body. That's how I would like this to play out.
That feels like you're just being contrarian now.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, that's the reason for it. You don't want someone to tell you what to do. You want to be given the choice and then choosing to do the sensible thing yourself.
That's what I want.
Yeah. But why? What's the difference?
I mean, the other viewpoint I haven't really settled on a proper outlook for this. The other viewpoint I have is, I don't care what people want. This is medically proven, or at least statistically proven. You're going to fucking have this because it's good for you. It's good for everyone. And I don't care if you don't want it. You are not qualified to reject this.
Which is why we'll now be broadcasting this podcast over the public PA system every Wednesday. I don't care if you don't think it's good for you. You have to fucking listen to it.
Yeah, I'd say my faith in collective action reduced massively over COVID when I saw other people, sometimes through callousness, not giving a shit about other people, sometimes through incompetence, not giving a shit about other people. And it made me think, why am I sacrificing left and right financially or through freedoms to try and do what's good for everyone when no one else seems to be bothering? It's not true, obviously, plenty of people did, but there were enough people not doing it, including the government officials, Boris Johnson and the Partygate scandal. It's like, how serious is this? These guys aren't even bothering. But at the same time, I also understand the Prime Minister, you can't expect him to isolate himself in a shoebox. He's a special case, but nonetheless, Partygate...
Doesn't mean he has to have a garden party.
Yeah, also true. Doesn't mean he has to have a garden party. So if we were to have COVID again, I don't know if I would adhere to the rules as strictly as I did.
I think some of them were overzealous, not in mandating that people get vaccinated to be able to go into public spaces, for example, but in saying, don't go more than this distance from your house, stay locked up indoors at all times. These things, but then if we look at things like the plague, that was exactly what needed to happen to stop the spread of it. So I don't know, when I really assessed, I was annoyed and outraged at the time, but again, that's because it infringed on my personal freedoms to want to go places, let's say. But I guess to the level that they were at was what I found ridiculous. In how quickly people were willing to become communist-style curtain twitchers and call the police on you if you went out for a run. And there were cases like that where people were being stopped. Like, where do you live? Oh, I live like 3 miles up the canal. What the fuck are you doing here then? Well, I'm trying to exercise and stay healthy because I'm not allowed to go anywhere or do anything.
I'm walking.
You're too far away from your house. Get the fuck back.
Yeah.
But the people I would go after more in those scenarios, they're not quite anti-vaxxers, but they are idiots who are exploiting people's trust or compassion. They exploit other people's compassion. And that is the idiots that walk around with this like sunflower society, whatever it is, lanyard that people still wear in airports now. And it's a thing that basically says not all disabilities are visible. I have a disability and that's why I don't have to wear a mask, kind of thing. I don't have to follow public health compliant regulations because I've got a disorder that you can't see. But you could apply for one of these little lanyards that gave people, like in certain cases, people gave them quite a lot of leeway. Okay, you don't have to wear a mask in the supermarket because you've got your little fucking lanyard on that says you've got asthma or something like that. Putting a face mask on is not going to give you an asthma attack. It's not going to kill you to try and protect the public health. These people were just like,
I'm not going to have the government tell me what to do. I'm not going to wear a mask.
It was just a fucking joke. So that's exactly the kind of people that would be annoying in your case, that you say, well, these people are just flouting the rules and relying on other people giving them the benefit of the doubt and saying, well, I actually don't want you to go into a coma because you can't get enough air because we've told you to put a mask on. So I guess you can walk around and cough on all the vegetables.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, thanks, Dad.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Things like game theory and tragedy of the commons and this kind of stuff. But we should probably begin rounding ourselves towards some conclusions. So I feel like we've already covered dark side, really. We just need to recap.
I feel like a lot of this anti-vax community is a dark side in itself. It would be harder to find the light side because it seems largely exploitative and playing on people's wildest fears, using quotes and sources out of context, sharing and resharing them through social media through multiple channels to give it an air of legitimacy while someone profits from it. It's all pretty dark.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think healthy skepticism is good. Just don't let it cross into blind cynicism. How you make that distinction, I don't know. Think carefully. Think critically.
Think for yourself.
Think for yourself.
A repeat message.
But not too much. You can also let some like medical institutions do some thinking for you and just take what they say at face value. That's also fine.
You can do some thinking by thinking that that's a good idea.
It turns out life's complex. Ugh.
Yeah, especially when you roll into the fact that we had a pandemic that makes this quite personal for a lot of people. The anti-vax topic it does shine a light on grey areas if you don't let yourself take one of the polarized views, vaccine good or vaccine bad.
Definitely a lot to this. So, moving it along to a well-known section.
Is it sexual?
Pardon?
That was incredibly loud here.
Hello?
Is everyone deaf?
Oh my God, I'm deaf. Is it sexual? Is this a sexually motivated or directly sexual subculture, would you say?
I have found nothing that I can even make a sexual joke about in reading about this.
I agree with your conclusions, Dr. Andrew. So that's the end of that section.
I mean, if you really want to stretch it out, there's probably some porn on there about vaccination nurses. I mean, you can maybe compare a needle to a penis.
You can compare mine to a needle.
When it's getting injected. No, I got nothing.
I got nothing, no. Opinion after research. Has your mind changed? Have you learned something?
I was very interested to see the parenting angle and how someone not justified it, but explained how they fell into being an anti-vaxxer and a lot of the stuff that got rolled into it. It doesn't surprise me that the community is vitrious in its attacking of people outside of the community.
Yes, they welcome people that say the right things and expel those that question the narrative immediately.
Have I learned anything? I learned a bit more about the history of vaccination, but largely what I came into this thinking, I just got a bit more information about, I would say. I think if I wanted to draw some final points or conclusions, I was having a look through something from the Pacific Island Journal, which confirmed what a few other sources had touched on briefly, in that talking about refusing vaccinations is a lot more common in minority groups. And by that, I'm not dancing around saying race or race-related issues, but examples would be something like Native Islanders when they were talking about the Pacific Islands, or First Nations people in Canada, Native Americans in the US. Basically,
who might have very good reasons to distrust the institutions, such as perhaps smallpox blankets.
But this kind of mindset of, well, the anti-vaxxer mindset trades in mistrust, and it feeds on that fear from people online, from those that are profiting from it. And a mistrust of government and institutions, and big pharma gets mentioned quite a lot. Groups of people that are in these minorities already feel disenfranchised, and therefore they're a lot more likely to object to being told what to do and have a lot of skepticism from these bodies. So it was interesting to have someone write it down and document it and see the percentages, which are quite high. And it made a lot of sense. These people already don't trust what they're being told because they've had their trust betrayed several times in the past. And that's how this woman fell into being an anti-vaxxer. She felt let down by a state, by a medical service. And it's a powerful thing to have trust in something, or to lose that trust in something that we kind of all take for granted, and that, the government's there and institutions work, and to a certain extent.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think my opinion changed post-COVID more than it's changed over the course of the research. I think I'm more skeptical now than I was, not in the concept of vaccines. I think that works, and it'd be crazy to doubt the mechanism of vaccination working. It's reasonable enough to doubt rushed vaccines like the COVID ones, that obviously they still did clinical trials and things, but certainly not to the extent that most vaccines you'll have had will have decades and decades of data behind them. So then you might be a bit more justifiably concerned that I'm not sure I should put this in my body because you've not really looked at all the consequences, all of the side effects yet. So one of my friends, did I mention her already, who suffered quite severe consequences from the COVID vaccine? It messed up her menstrual cycle for 6 months, which is a pretty wild thing to happen. I think even if that side effect had been published more broadly, she probably would have still got the vaccine. But nonetheless, it still made it very apparent, which I shouldn't need an anecdotal example to do, but it made it very apparent that it's not all gravy train with vaccines. There can be real world consequences to it, and it's kind of a probabilistic thing that you take your chances with. But anyway, opinion after research, much the same. And I learnt about the origins of vaccines. I didn't realize we'd only eradicated 2 diseases globally. But yeah. Would I be into anti-vaxxing? Next question. No, I'm going to stick with my vaccines, I think.
I could get more vaccines, become super pro-vaccine. There's a doctor around here, actually, who's really up for people having ones that we wouldn't necessarily have unless you're going to somewhere very exotic. He just wants us to all have loads of vaccines all the time. And that's maybe not a bad thing.
I'll be honest, that's sounding a bit red flaggy. This guy, for very reasonable prices, will give me a lot of untested weird vaccines. Oh, no, shit.
He's not me down a back alley. It's more like the ones that you might come into contact with that are carried by stuff like ticks, but it's just not standard or regulated. It's not one of the ones that we get as default, so people don't have it. Or the hepatitis vaccines. Like, hepatitis is a fairly horrible disease, but we just don't vaccinate against it by standard unless you're going to somewhere or you're close to being exposed to hepatitis.
Is it B or C? Or one of them we do vaccinate as standard, and the other, I think, as you said, I guess there's no downside really, apart from
growing hoofs and cow's ears and stuff.
Apart from becoming a cow.
So, if you've enjoyed what you listened to, or even if you didn't, come along and tell us about it. You can talk to us on social bullshit medias. You can find us on X at Sub-Subcult Instagram at Sub-Subculture Podcast, and our Reddit page r/Sub-Subculture Podcast. So leave us suggestions for future topics, and if we take your suggestion, we'll give you a shout out and let the world know, all 6 of the world know, that this was your idea. But our next hot, oh so hot, so steamy topic is very much less pustully. Next time, we are talking about football fan culture.
Dun dun dun. You might think you know about football fans, but you might not. I don't know yet. I haven't researched it.
Yeah, but we might say things that you haven't heard, but maybe you thought quietly in the recesses of your brain.
We will make you feel good for having that awful opinion. Maybe.
Did you watch a FIFA World Cup recently? Why not? You're gay.
The trouble with Liverpool is they always try to walk it into the goal. It's a game of 2 halves, mate.
Is this your standard go-to football chat?
This is, I believe, what football people say to each other. I occasionally say things like this when I'm trying to pass myself off as a common man in my local drinking hole.
Anyway,
I'll start by looking up what the rules are. But anyway, that's next time.
That is next time. Thank you. This was scientific and informative. I did a lot of reading, a lot of screaming into the abyss on this one.
Pleasure as always, Andrew. Thank you for your delicious speech tones.
And thank you, listeners, for enduring with us, coming down this windy road of sanity, or lack thereof.
Right, let's wrap this up. Let's let the people go.
It's ciao for now, babies. Obey my dog.